wife whispered, "Shh, this changes everything." When we found the family documents, I said, "It sure does." When she realized the secret inheritance she'd found actually proved she wasn't Dad's biological child, everything changed in ways she hadn't expected. I, 34 male, was helping my wife Natalie, 32, clean out her late father's house last month. He passed away 6 weeks ago after a long battle with cancer. Her mom died when she was 12, so it was just the two of us sorting through 40 years of accumulated stuff. We were in the attic going through old filing cabinets when Natalie found this manila envelope labeled Estate Planning, Confidential, tucked behind some tax returns from the 90s. She literally gasped and grabbed my arm. "Shh, this changes everything," she whispered, even though we were alone in the house. Inside were documents we'd never seen before: trust paperwork, investment account statements, and what looked like property deeds. The accounts showed balances totaling around $800, plus mentions of 2 rental properties we didn't know existed. Natalie's hands were shaking. "He told me there was nothing left," said the medical bills ate everything. Her dad Harold had always lived modestly, drove a 15-year-old Honda, bought generic everything, wore the same clothes for decades. Classic Depression-era mentality, even though he was born in the 60s. Natalie and her younger brother Ethan, 29, had assumed the house was basically it for inheritance. But here's where it gets weird. As we kept digging through the papers, we found a second envelope. This one was marked Medical Records, Private. Inside was correspondence from a fertility clinic dated 1991, the year before Natalie was born. There were test results showing Harold was completely sterile due to a childhood illness. Like 0 sperm count sterile. The documents included consent forms for using a sperm donor, signed by both Harold and Natalie's mom, Linda. Natalie went dead silent reading these. Then she carefully put them back in the envelope and looked at me. "We're not mentioning this to anyone." "Nat, these are medical records. They don't change anything legal." "No, you don't understand. The trust documents, look at the language." She showed me a paragraph Harold had handwritten on the trust paperwork. "All assets to be divided equally between my biological children upon my death." Biological children, not just children. "That's probably just standard language," I said. "No, look at the date. He updated this 2 years ago. After Ethan did that ancestry DNA thing for fun and Harold got weird about it, remember?" I did remember. Ethan had gotten one of those DNA kits for Christmas, and Harold had gotten really upset, saying those companies were scams and privacy violations. Made a huge deal about it. "Nat, you're still his daughter. He raised you." She was already pulling out her phone, taking photos of the investment statements and property deeds. Not the medical records, though. Those she put in her purse. "I'm his daughter, but apparently not his biological daughter. And if Ethan finds out, you think he'd actually try to cut you out?" "His wife Veronica would. You know she would." She wasn't wrong. Veronica was the type who counted every penny when we split dinner bills. Update 1. So Natalie decided to move fast. She contacted the lawyer handling Harold's estate and said we'd found additional documentation about assets. She presented the investment accounts and property deeds, but nothing else. The lawyer, Mr. Brennan, was surprised, but said these things happen when people are private about finances. He started the process of tracking down the accounts and properties to add to the estate. Ethan was thrilled when he found out. "Dad, you sly dog," he kept saying, "living like a pauper with all that money." But then Veronica started asking questions. Where exactly did we find these documents? Why weren't they with his other important papers? Why would Harold hide this from his own kids? Natalie had answers for everything. Found them in the attic. Harold was private about money, probably didn't want us to become lazy knowing there was inheritance coming. Smooth as butter. Everything was going fine until Veronica suggested we do a complete search of the house before selling it. "There might be more hidden assets," she said. "We should go through everything systematically." The medical records were still in our house, hidden in Natalie's home office. But Natalie got paranoid. What if there were copies somewhere? What if Harold's doctor had records? What if the fertility clinic still existed? She started acting strange. Insisted on being present for every search session at Harold's house. Would redirect people away from certain areas. kept making excuses about why we couldn't search the attic thoroughly because of structural concerns. Then she did something really stupid. She went back to Harold's house alone one night and tried to search for any other medical documentation. I only found out because our Ring doorbell showed her leaving at 11 p.m. and coming back at 2 a.m. What were you doing? Just wanted to grab some photo albums before Veronica got her hands on them. At midnight, I couldn't sleep. I checked our shared location history. We'd set that up years ago for safety. She'd been at Harold's house for 3 hours. The next day, Ethan called me. Not Natalie. Me. Hey, weird question. Was Natalie at Dad's house last night? The neighbor said they saw lights on. Yeah, she went to grab some family photos. At midnight? She's been having trouble sleeping. Grief hits people differently. Right. He didn't sound convinced. Also, do you know why she threw away a bunch of Dad's old files? The neighbor saw her putting boxes in the dumpster. My stomach dropped. I'll ask her about it. When I confronted Natalie, she admitted she'd found more medical stuff and destroyed it. It doesn't matter anyway. I'm his daughter in every way that counts. Then why are you hiding it? Because Veronica will use it against me. You know she will. She was probably right. But destroying documents from a dead man's house before an estate is settled? That's not a good look. Update 2. Everything went to hell yesterday. So Ethan did his own digging. Turns out when someone acts suspicious as hell about an inheritance, people notice. He hired a private investigator. Yeah, an actual PI to look into the sudden discovery of assets. The PI found something Natalie hadn't thought about. Harold's email account. Ethan had guessed the password. It was their childhood dog's name, plus Harold's birth year. In the emails from 2 years ago, right after Ethan did that DNA test, there were exchanges between Harold and a lawyer about updating estate planning documents to ensure proper biological lineage. There was also an email to the fertility clinic from 30 years ago, asking for records. They'd responded that records were destroyed after 25 years per their policy. Ethan called a family meeting, just the 4 of us, him, Veronica, Natalie, and me. He didn't beat around the bush. So, found out something interesting. Dad was sterile. Natalie tried to play dumb. What? That's ridiculous. Is it? Is that why you've been sneaking around Dad's house? Destroying documents? I haven't destroyed anything. The neighbor saw you with boxes, going to the dumpster, at midnight. Veronica was practically vibrating with excitement. Oh my God, you're not his real daughter. I am his real daughter. Natalie snapped. He raised me. But not biologically, Ethan said quietly, and Dad specifically wrote biological children in the trust. You don't know that. You're making assumptions. Ethan pulled out his phone and showed printed emails. Dad knew. He found out 2 years ago when I did that DNA test. He asked me privately if I'd noticed anything unusual in my results. When I said no, he seemed relieved. Then he updated his will. Natalie went pale. Those emails could be about anything. Could they? Then why don't we both take DNA tests right now? Compare them. Siblings share about 50% of their DNA. Half-siblings share 25%. Want to bet which one we are? Silence. Veronica couldn't contain herself. This means the entire inheritance goes to Ethan. All of it. That's when Natalie lost it. Started screaming about how unfair this was. How she was more of a daughter to Harold than Ethan ever was a son. She'd visited him every week during his cancer treatment, while Ethan showed up maybe once a month. She'd handled his medications, his appointments, his bills. And now you want to take everything because of DNA? You greedy bastard. Ethan stayed calm. I'm not taking anything. Dad made his wishes clear. He wanted his biological children to inherit. That's not me being greedy. That's me respecting his final wishes. You could share it anyway. You could do the right thing. Like you did when you hid those medical records? When you destroyed evidence? Natalie turned to me. Are you going to let them do this? I was honestly stunned. Nat, you lied to everyone. You destroyed documents. You tried to defraud the estate. I tried to get what I deserved. I was his daughter for 32 years. But not biologically, Veronica said with a smirk. And that's what matters. Legally. Update 3. The lawyers are now involved. Ethan's lawyer sent Natalie a formal letter stating that based on the language in the trust and the evidence of Harold's knowledge about her biological parentage, she has no claim to any assets beyond personal mementos. Natalie hired her own lawyer, who basically told her she was screwed. The trust language was clear. Harold's intent was documented in emails, and her destruction of documents could be considered tampering with estate property. But here's where Natalie really screwed herself. Remember those rental properties we discovered? Turns out Natalie had already contacted the tenants, introducing herself as the new landlord. She'd collected rent from them, $3,200 total, and deposited it into her personal account. That's fraud. Straight up fraud. When Ethan's lawyer found out, they threatened criminal charges unless Natalie immediately returned the money and signed away any claim to the estate. She tried to play victim one more time, showed up at our house at 6 a.m. crying, "Ethan's trying to destroy me. You have to help me." Help you how? Talk to him. Make him see reason. He's getting $800 plus 2 properties. He can spare something for me. You committed fraud, Nat. I collected rent that was partially mine anyway. No, it wasn't. You knew it wasn't yours when you collected it. She then tried a different approach. If you don't help me, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. How you stood by while your wife was robbed of her inheritance. Robbed? You tried to con your way into money that wasn't yours. I was his daughter. Not according to the terms he set? She got nasty then. Started saying she'd tell my family I was abusive, that I'd forced her to hide the documents, that this was all my idea. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Say that again. On camera. She shut up. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to return that rent money. You're going to sign whatever documents Ethan's lawyer wants, and then we're going to have a serious conversation about our marriage. You're divorcing me over money? I'm divorcing you because you're a liar and a thief who threatened to falsely accuse me of abuse when you didn't get your way. The mask completely dropped then. No more tears, just cold calculation. Fine, but I want alimony, spousal support, half of everything. Good luck with that. Pretty sure fraud and extortion don't look great in divorce proceedings. Final update. It's over, all of it. Natalie returned the rent money and signed away any claim to Harold's estate. Ethan, in what I guess was either guilt or pity, gave her $10 for her years of caring for Dad. She took it without a thank you. But the real kicker, Natalie had been playing another angle I didn't even know about. 2 weeks ago, she reached out to the fertility clinic Harold had used. She was trying to find out who her biological father was, thinking maybe she could hit him up for money. The clinic still existed, but had been bought by a larger medical group. They told her that records from the 90s were destroyed, but they did have a database of donor profiles that she could access for a fee. She paid $500 to access it. Found a likely match based on the timeline and physical characteristics. The donor was listed as a medical student at the time, Italian heritage, brown eyes, 5'10". Basic stuff. But here's where Natalie's entitlement really bit her in the ass. She somehow tracked down 3 men who were medical students at that university in 1991 who fit the description. Started messaging them on social media, saying she was their biological daughter and wanted to connect with her real father. One of them, Dr. Anthony Ritchie, was very confused because he'd never been a sperm donor. He was also very married to a very prominent judge who didn't appreciate getting Facebook messages from a random woman claiming her husband was her baby daddy. The judge, Judge Catherine Ritchie, threatened Natalie with a restraining order and defamation suit if she ever contacted them again. The second guy, Dr. James Castellano, had been a donor, but he'd also specifically chosen anonymous donation and had no interest in contact. He sent her a cease and desist through his lawyer. The third guy was dead, had been for 5 years. But Natalie found his widow and children and reached out to them too, talking about being their half-sister and wanting to be part of the family. Yeah, that went over great. The widow called her a grief vampire and blocked her on everything. Word got around, because Natalie had been anything but discreet, and now she's known in our social circle as the woman who harassed strangers claiming to be their secret daughter while trying to steal her dead father's inheritance. Our divorce was finalized last week. Uncontested, because what was she going to contest? I had evidence of fraud, extortion attempts, and harassment of multiple families. She got her clothes, her car, that's in her name, and her personal belongings. That's it. She moved back to her college town where nobody knows her. Last I heard from a mutual friend, she was telling people she was a widow and that her husband's family had cheated her out of her inheritance. Ethan sold both rental properties and Harold's house. After all the taxes and fees, he walked away with about $1.2 million. He and Veronica bought a much bigger house, and Veronica quit her job to be a full-time mom to their one kid. I'm in therapy, trying to process how I didn't see who Natalie really was for 8 years of marriage. My therapist says people like Natalie are good at hiding their true nature until they're faced with something they want badly enough. The truth really does set you free, just not always in the way you expect. Oh, and the best part? Ethan recently did a deeper dive into his DNA results out of curiosity. Turns out he has genetic markers for a hereditary kidney condition that Harold also had. So he's definitely biological. But here's the thing. If Natalie had just been honest from the start, Ethan probably would have shared the inheritance anyway. He's not a monster. But the lying, the fraud, the threats, that burned every bridge she had. Sometimes the real inheritance isn't money or property. It's the relationships you build and the trust you earn. Natalie threw away 32 years of being Harold's daughter for money that was never hers to begin with. And honestly, Harold probably knew exactly what he was doing with that trust language. He knew who his children really were, biology or not. The money just revealed it to everyone else.